Okay, so we're spiritual beings, which are human beings. Spiritual beings are human beings in my little videos, okay? That's how I look at it, because everything I say is mainly only from a totally spiritual human perspective. In other words, from a human perspective. It's not usually from another perspective. They're my fairy tales, they're my fables, they're my dreams or illusions, whatever word you want to say on them. They're my reality. I see no difference between a movie, a fairy tale, a dream, a fantasy, a thought. It's all my reality, and that's really all the videos are. So it's for each person to, take what they want from them, really, or nothing at all if it seems, not remotely real in any way. But, in my way of looking at things now, very little is real. So that's, I myself cannot distinguish, I would say, between reality and fiction, between reality and what is not reality, or what most people would see as not part of their reality. So that's why I say it's from a purely human perspective and from my perspective, from how I see my little realm of reality around me, And that's like anything. Some of us, I suppose a good example of that, and I'm supposed to be making a video instead of rambling on about myself, but a good example of that is, like when you're, like for instance, I think of this very much in my own life. Like in the past, like when I lived with my mother and father, my world revolved around my mother and father. So often I didn't see anything else. I didn't see, what was going on in the street or what was going on even locally. I was totally immersed, that's the word, in them. And, and my reactions to my relationship with them. And this is true when you're in a relationship. Sometimes it actually, takes over you to such an extent that your field of view is so narrow that you wouldn't know what else was going on around you. And that's how I see the world now. It just depends on what you want to make of what's to where you see a bit more around you and you make more of it. Whether you're interpreting correctly or whether you're interpreting it wrongly is, open to interpretation. Or, like I was just going to be clever and say, there's a movie called Lost in Translation. I have not seen it, but I'm, in my way of looking at things now, as you know, I pick whatever I want from anything. I don't have to believe the whole movie to take even the title from a movie. It might be a bad movie. It might be a movie I think is this or that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it's about. I'm just taking the title. And this is true of my videos too. Very much so, I would imagine, because I'm often not on a roll, and I hope I am on one for this one, where basically the video could get lost in translation. And that also is true of the Matrix and the world around us, because like I could read a book and I might interpret it different to another person who reads the same book, you see. So this is what I'm saying. So each person's reality will be different depending on how far they see, what they're focused on, particularly what you're focused on, you see. Because often you're focused on just something that is right in front of you, but you're not the old saying, you don't see the forest for the trees. And that's how most of us tend to be. And that's certainly how I've been. And even now, the only difference now is that I still probably still only seeing the trees, but maybe I might be looking more closely at the trees. Or maybe before I was just looking at the leaf instead of the whole tree, if you follow what I'm saying. And that, but that's just been putting it kind of fancy, I suppose. But it's still, like I say, you could listen to my video, and I've said this before, it's sometimes the singer, not the song. In my case, it could be the song might be better than the singer. In other words, because if I lose people in translation, in other words, if because my videos might be disjointed and I might be all over the place because I might not be able to put my thoughts in a coherent manner, shall we say. Therefore, it gets lost in translation. But maybe some of the people that listen might not mind that because they might just still be able to get something out of bits of it. And that's okay. In fact, that is better than nothing. And that's really pretty much what they're for now, in that sense. Because it's a fantasy now, and it's like, because it is a fantasy, and because I realise that each person it's a shared fantasy probably, or a shared reality, depending on how serious you take your fairy tales, or if you think that everything is a fairy tale. See, I think everything is a fairy tale. Everything is a fantasy. So once you get to that point, you don't have to distinguish. But other people will still distinguish, and they say, hey, but don't you think something's real? And my only answer to that at this very present moment, and I may not be thinking clearly because, the Matrix is in full swing, I would have to say I don't know. I personally think that, if you're in a matrix that is like, I think I saw it somewhere else where, I don't know what they're called, but it's a bit like where I've got a whole stack of cups there, plastic cups or paper cups or whatever, and one is inside of the other. So what is the real reality? It's like I may not be in touch with any reality in this reality because, it may just be like going from one like you pick up one bit of information, one clue from the matrix. You focus on one thing, like I say, you focus on, and you say, oh yeah, that means something. And of course it does, but it's only telling you what is already in this fairy tale, in this reality. It never tells me anything outside of my fairy tale or my reality. It only tells me things about what are actually in this fairy tale or this fantasy or this reality, depending on how true you think it is. That didn't make any sense, I know. And that's lost in translation, you see. Because obviously while I'm thinking something, I think it's making sense, but it could well be lost in translation, the actual real full idea or the full concept or whatever it is that I'm thinking. Because usually when you're thinking, you're trying to piece together, particularly myself, because like I say, I always tend to see 2 or 3 sides. because I realise when I'm making the videos that not everyone is going to be coming from my perspective or my fantasy or my perspective of reality, because to me my perspective of reality I know is a fantasy to many. And it even seems like that to me sometimes too. So I understand that, and also I do like to try to see it to be logical, to see it from a couple of angles. I do try to do that. That way I don't think that I'm going too far into the fantasy. But either way, it is all like that. Like I say, it depends on where you are, how much you see or what you want to see. What you focus on is your reality, your fantasy. The person standing right next to you. If you're engrossed in an argument with someone, you're totally focused on that. It's your whole world for that moment. It is the vibration of this matrix at that moment. Unfortunately, particularly if it's an argument, because it's a negative frequency. And it will affect what's around you. But the person, if there was someone standing nearby, if they are a human being, it's not going to affect a table or a chair, as I've said before, or that. It will mainly affect a human being. They will not be part of my fantasy or my reality, depending on what I'm arguing about. Because if it's not real, then I'm in a fantasy even if I'm arguing or engaging in a conversation. If I'm not engaging in a total communication, proper communication, where there is proper vibration, proper meaning being sent, I don't know. In other words, a conversation, proper conversation, not where people are just talking at one another, where they're just blasting one another. That's more like an attack, That is just sending vibrations. It's much more likely to affect those around you and yourself and the person, but it's not an exchange. It's not going to benefit anyone. It's just going to create negativity for yourself, for the other person, and for those around you, which you may not think that matters, because you don't, as I say, we're connected to other human beings, or should be, and therefore, that will affect them. Because human beings are so limited, because we are limited, we're unaware of that. We don't see. If we could see electricity going from one person to another, then we would be aware of what we're doing and what we are, I suppose. But we can't see it. In fact, even in the past, if I had an argument, I used to think, it's terrible because I affected one person. But you don't tend to think that it could be affecting the whole area or a certain part of an area. And you don't... and that person, other people that are around will be affected, but they won't know they're affected by your conversation. So it's kind of like, and if the frequency goes down, then that will, once the frequency goes down, like even when you're having an argument, your frequency goes down. So immediately you're opening the gate for negative thoughts to come in, negative entities to put negative thoughts there, if you want to look at it that way. I've heard this before, and I think it's so. It's kind of like, we think that every thought we think is our own. or that we get thoughts only directly from other human beings. But we don't. We get thoughts also from the matrix, only if we allow them. I don't allow them, but of course I do. I don't consciously want them in, and I don't consciously want to allow them to come in. But if I allow the matrix to bring the frequency down, and I don't allow that either, but if the matrix manages to do that, then, I will be temporarily, depending on how low the frequency and how much I get engrossed in those thoughts, how much those thoughts overtake me and I focus on them, which is almost impossible. A thought, it's very hard to dismiss a thought, but also it's extremely hard to dismiss a thought if you are dealing with another person or if you're dealing with the matrix. On your own, you might be able to dismiss a negative thought because you might say, well, you're in a more quiet place, shall we say. That's if you can find one in the matrix. I certainly can't. So, in fact, the matrix is in full swing out there today. You probably can't hear it, but I can hear it because, they're laying pipes all down the street. So they have to dig up the whole street and great big machines, technology. Technology is a vibration. Technology is anti-life. Technology is anti-human life. Technology is a negative vibration. And a negative vibration brings a human frequency down, so then the negative entities can place a negative thought in your mind. And then we have the matrix in full swing playing its game. And, some people like myself, I've said this before, the matrix is a video game. If you want to put it simply, it may not seem like a game. It may just seem like myself that I am thinking negative and that the world is against me, shall we say, that type of thing. But, that is only because that is how you see it if you don't realise that you are in a fantasy video game. It is not real in the sense that it is it is real in the sense that it feels real, it sounds real, but it is not really meant to be real for a human being. Because then you are playing the game. But, I can only speak from my own fantasy way of looking at things. And, I don't, I'm not a sporting person, as I've said, so I don't like playing games. I don't mind watching a game, and I wouldn't mind playing a game provided I'm consciously chose to, and provided I know what the rules are, and provided I know who the players are, and provided I have the appropriate tools You know, if I'm going to play a game of tennis, I need a tennis racket. I don't want to be given a stick. But in the Matrix, that's quite likely, you know. That was just a bit of wit, even though it makes no sense. But, you know, also, if you're playing a game and you don't want to play, and you understand, like I do now, that I'm in this sort of game. Before I didn't understand that or didn't know it. But that is not, you know, that's to be expected, as I've said before, because most people are in the game. But I would think that a lot of people are not aware they're in the game because for the reasons I think I've mentioned before, that you only become aware that you're Alice in Wonderland or that you're in a fairy tale when things become too unrealistic or too over the top, shall we say, in comparison to your life before. You know, I suppose some people might feel that even in a relationship, to where they just can't believe they're dealing with some of the people they are. And so they feel that they've lost touch with their reality. This is another part of the matrix of the video game reality that we live in the sense that it has so many components. That's why in the videos I try to talk about the different elements, because you have to really, you can't just say it's a video game at one level, it's at quite a few levels. But that also will depend on your reality. You know, it will be a different game for each person. And like I say, like myself, I find that, you know, I have a policy, right? A policy. That sounds interesting, a policy. I used to always say I had a policy about the people around me and about where I lived. And, you know, it was like a policy of I'll stick to myself, live and let live. I won't bother anyone and I won't get too friendly because I don't want to be playing with people that could turn out to be of the psychopathy of the people that I've spoke of before. And this was long before I knew that, you know, as I've said before, that there is less of normal human beings. And when I say normal, I just mean that they are not of a certain personality type. You know, what we used to think was the average person is now the minority, and what used to be a very small minority is now the average, because the environment has changed, people's upbringing has changed, I would imagine, all these sorts of things. And I understand this because I've been part of it, I've been a victim of it, I've also been a product of it, but I have also produced it. So it works all ways. This is very sad to say. You know, so you have to, like I say, you have to be aware that at all, see, myself, I am probably dealing with the matrix at all levels now. Whereas if you're lucky, you will just deal with it at, say, a personality level. In other words, a one-on-one personal relationship level, and that could be a disaster. It could be, you know, very devastating and very negative for you. You know, and you will focus on that, and you will think that that is the matrix, that that is your whole world, and that if you can just solve that relationship, life will be hunky-dory again. But that's because, that's because if you don't realise that you're living in a matrix, you know. But if you realise you're living in a matrix, then you're dealing with everything else around you as well, because a matrix is a game earth in a way. But if you're like myself, where you don't want to play and you don't like games because you have, I think the reason I don't like games is because, like if you like games, well, you're in the right reality, okay? If you like games and you like to get reactions and you like to see what makes people tick and like to push them, then you're in the right reality. But if you have went the other way, as I have went in my life, because I sort of went the other way to where I like everything the reverse of a game. This is not because I'm better or worse than someone who likes to play, far from it. It just simply means that because of my circumstances, I never was sociable and I never interacted too much. And I thought that if I was going to have an interaction, I actually was looking for the exact opposite of that, you see. Because I'd kind of played games a bit myself in my early life. Because if you're not allowed to be yourself, then you have to put on a false front. You have to put on a false persona. Or even if it's not a false persona, you're basically pushing most of what... It's a bit like, hey, you want to say things to someone, right? But you don't say it because you know it's not going to be accepted. So you have to hold back. So you can't really express yourself, So... so I suppose I thought, the last thing I want to be is in a fake world, playing a fake game, no matter how interesting or exciting or fascinating, it may be. Because there's no... I'm not making sense here, but what I was trying to say that because of my own circumstances, I tolerate a game, a lot less than most people would. So therefore, if I'm in a matrix and they expect me to play, want me to play, demand that I play, and I sort of say, well, I know I'm in a matrix. See, this is just putting it at the fantasy level of someone who is in a video game, right? We're in a fantasy world. These are fantasy videos. We're in a fantasy video game. And I have been plonked here. Maybe I just fell here accidentally. I don't know. But either way, or maybe I am meant to be here. But for whatever reason, I don't accept that, and I don't want to play. I'm in a world where I don't want to participate. Of course, there was good reasons for this, which I could go into, but it all ties into the things that I've said in other videos about the frequency, vibration, and what we are, the realisation of it, or the non-realisation of it mainly. The non-realisation that you're a human being. And a non-realisation of what a human being is, but mainly, I would say to anyone that's listening, the non-realisation that a real human being is the centre of all. Now, that makes it sound kind of a lot more important than what I really want it to sound, because there are people who do agree with this, but they're not the same people, I wouldn't think. And I'm only guessing this there again, because you can't know how people really think. I can only go on information I get and what I see around me, etc., and I try to piece this fantasy reality together as best I can. That's why I don't like making the videos in a way, because but I now get to the point where, in the sense that lost in translation, and that I may be, saying stuff where I am promoting something that I don't really, endorse. But you'd say, well, look, you're over making your videos too important. Well, this is true too. It's like that. You do have to say, look, you say something, if it gets lost in translation, that's a problem. Only for me, because I don't want that to happen, but I'm aware that it definitely can happen. And that's why I try to correct things as best I can. In saying we're the centre of the universe, that is purely my own fantasy, my own reality, or my own way of viewing a human being. I would say that about a human being under the circumstances now, even if everything else I say, like that we are at the lowest level and we're not at the high level that we should be at, to where we're aware of much more of what we should be, what we're capable of, what the reality even is, what we're supposed to be doing, because I'm aware that we're definitely in the dark. But even if that was not true, even if I, sitting here now, where I do not feel that I'm on top of anything, despite knowing about the matrix, that really doesn't matter, I still feel that I'm at the lowest possible level to deal with the matrix, to play in the matrix, to participate in the matrix, plus the fact that obviously I don't want to, so that doesn't help. But even if I'm, or I'm still saying that I would still say the human being is still the most. But that is because I think I am one, and because I value that type of life. And I do think it is unique, and I do think it is singularly, the most fascinating, the most real. And even if it wasn't the most advanced, because I've already said the technology makes human beings pale by comparison at the present time, and is able to do that. That does not matter to me. I would still be an advocate for it, just as I would be an advocate for the cat outside, as opposed to a mechanical device that could outmaneuver the cat and outthink the cat in every possible way. It just would not matter, so it just wouldn't impress me. But obviously I do not think that's the situation anyway, as I've done in the videos. I say, we are limited, we are suppressed, we're kept at a low frequency and low awareness in every single way. But as I say, I would still advocate, and I just thought I'd make that point. So when I say the centre of the so-called universe, whatever that is, that would stand regardless of what position a human being has. And it is correct to think that way, I would think. It is correct for a cat to think that its kind and other cats is, what is important. It is not correct for a cat to think that an elephant is its master, shall we say. It just is not correct. It would not make sense to any life form. I don't think I've made sense either. But either way, I'll do my usual lost in translation, yes. But you see, in this video game, because the video game is playing other people. You're playing other players. These days I think that's the case. And you're playing the game. You're playing the Matrix. You're playing even if you're playing in those old video games, you're playing what is set up there for you to try to maneuver your way through it, or to battle it out, or whatever it is, whatever game you're playing. It's a different, it really is for you to, it really is a type of battle, which is like the World War III thing that we talk about, or that I talk about anyway. It's a game, and in a game, obviously you're meant to win the poker game, you're meant to win the match, you're meant to, so how do you get someone to play like myself that doesn't want to play and thinks that it is not wise to play, even for that matter, and knows that you're limited? So you're like, I haven't got the skills to play this game. I'm at low level. I'm limited. I can't compete with a matrix that is at its full potential and is everywhere and everything. Why am I in this position? Surely, if it's a World War III, surely if it's the last game, surely you would think that the old saying that they would keep the best to the last, for the last, best for the last. So I sort of say to myself, why am I here in this game? Because I know that I'm not the best. I don't want to play. I have no skills to play. I have no interest to play. I have no incentive to play. But the matrix is like saying, why don't you play? If you won't play, we'll stick pins in you till you do play. We'll follow you, and we will just keep prodding and poking and sticking pins in you to make you play, to make you react to our game. And so I say, I don't want to play. And if the game, and this is why the Matrix then plays a harder game. This is my own fantasy way of looking at the Matrix. If you think it's a real world, that's okay too. Some people would say, well, it's still a real world. It's a real world. Of course we have to play. Every day we have obstacles, we have circumstances, we have difficulties. Good things happen, bad things happen. In a matrix, for every good thing that happens, usually something negative will happen. And that, of course, will depend on how they want to play the game and what player you are and who they are wanting to play a particular way at a particular time, depending on who you are, what your position is, what relationship to this matrix you have. And of course, like myself, I have absolutely no idea. I am definitely Alice in Wonderland. you know, and now I realise I'm dealing with Mad Hatters and false tea parties, you know, and chasing, yes, white rabbits, not knowing, you know, pulling me where I don't want to go, and basically where I don't know where I'm going. And even someone like myself, where I actually will see 2 or 3 things, 2 or 3 options, and see the scenarios, and we'll see even a little bit of the matrix. We'll see what the matrix is doing. We'll see that the matrix is playing. You know, it doesn't matter, because it's like we don't care if you even see our game, because if we stick pins in you, you will jump. Let's see how you can not jump. And of course, that's why I say it's a frequency vibration battle in many ways. It has to be. In my fantasy world, it has to be. Because if I say I'm not going to jump, there we go. We get our frequency. We get our interruption. We get our lost in translation. And we get the game. And that is a very mild game. But, you know, it depends on what you're doing. So if you're making a video and you get an interruption, that is the matrix calling. Everything is of the matrix. But it doesn't mean that it's not a real person calling, you know. In fact, that would just be then like, oh, maybe that was a real person calling. Maybe I would have liked to have answered that phone. Maybe it was an important phone call. Maybe while I'm sitting here presuming it's a negative matrix call, you know, because it can go either way. Then, of course, my vibration will go down because in many ways, just in making the video, like, you know, sometimes it's easier to make a video than to make a phone call. But if you make a phone call, you're only talking to one person. But, you know, that may be more beneficial for me to do that. But, you know, if I can't do that, then I make a video. But maybe then some other people might join in and get something out of it. Because, you know, if you don't know someone, it's hard to say that you're what is the benefit with the video. And I particularly am very much, as you know, not really for that, because I don't, you know, think that technology should be the bringer together of human beings. But we're in a matrix, and we're in a World War III, and times are different, and the world is different. So that appears to be a last-ditch option. I don't think it's the way it was meant to be. I don't think it's the way to go, as they say. But, like I say, I'm a limited person under limited circumstances, being limited, and limiting myself sometimes too, because it is still, you know, like I say, you do have to it is a frequency vibration, World War III scenario, I think. I personally think it just comes down to that simple fantasy. The circumstances are all about creating a frequency. The vibration, the sound, the noise is all about creating a certain frequency. And as myself, like I say, if I say, well, look, I'm going to resist playing, I don't want to play in the Matrix game. It's a bit like that old song around a few years ago. The Matrix says, hey, you better come out and play. If you don't come out and play, we'll make you come out and play. Because we have to have players. And we have to have human players. We can't play amongst ourselves. Because the human frequency is just too much fun. We don't want to play with a fake frequency, we want to play with a real frequency. You can only get that from a human. You can't get it from anything else. You can play a game with you could play a game, with different tools, as I say, but this Matrix is a frequency game. I don't even know what these things fully are. Human frequency is human emotion, human feeling, human reaction. Whether a human is positive or negative. Whether a human perhaps still behaves like a human under Matrix circumstances. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure how far they push the game, what the full what the full aspect of it is. I'm not there again. I realise I'm lost in translation myself even, but the reality for me that I see that it is played with quite intensity at this particular time, because the Matrix has always been there, or at least been there as long as I can think of it, and that doesn't probably go back very far, but it's just that, like I say, at different points in time, different players will be expected to, play up and play the game. My father used to always say that. I don't know why he said that. There again, that's when the Matrix, that's when you become a little bit more aware. You say everything that was said to you in your life does have some relevance. That's something that, it comes to you. My father used to always say, you must get up and play the game. You must play the game. And he used to just say that randomly. Like he wasn't always watching a sport when he said that. But he applied it to sport too. He's like, you can't be in the game if you're not playing at full velocity, full, giving it your all. He didn't like it if he watched a cricket game and some of the players did what you call stonewall, which is like I'm trying to do now in the Matrix, strangely enough. He didn't like cricketers who batted, and I'm not a cricket expert either, by the way, but I remember this. I have vague things on some sports, okay? like the Matrix, I don't know all the rules. I don't know I'm not an expert. I haven't played it all my life. I just realise now I'm standing in the middle of a cricket field and they're saying, hey, you better hit this ball for 6. And I'm like, I don't even know how to hold the bat. It's a bit heavy for me. I don't like the cricket bat. I don't like the cricket ball. It's hard. If it hits me on the head, I'm gone, And I haven't got a helmet, etc. All these sorts of things. But either way, he used to say, play up and play the game. He didn't like it when batsmen went to the crease, as they call it, and stonewall. That means that you don't play to win. You just play to stay in, so that you're not out. You don't want to get out. But you're not interested in scoring a large amount of runs, which of course the game of cricket, and as in all sports, is to win or to score runs. But of course there is a strategy in that, in cricket. But a lot of people don't like watching cricketers that do that because it's boring. They want to see, you're hitting the 6s and the 4s and the boundaries and all this sort of thing, and having a crack at the fast bowlers instead of, ducking the ball. But, like I say, I don't know about strategies and things there again. If you're in a game, you have to have a strategy. But, so my attitude is, to stonewall. But like I say, it's, I may not be very good even at ducking, So essentially, that's not going to work in a matrix either. Like if you're young and fit and you've got some skills, you might be able to duck the odd balls and wait for the right one to hit it. That's what stonewalling is in cricket. And that's a game. And the matrix is a game. The matrix wants you to, maybe throw down your bat and walk. You're not actually out, but walk before you're out, because it's like, oh, well, I'm only going to get out anyway, or... that cricket game's not a good example. But either way, like I say, it's very much being a participant in a game that you don't want to play, and also it's very much you wonder why you're in the game, particularly at these closing stages of the match. Because it's almost as though, I go back to cricket, this has come back to me now. Usually in cricket you have your really strong players at the front. Yes, those that can even stonewall to kind of settle everything in at the start, I believe. And then you have your champion players in the middle that the best bowlers can throw the best balls, the fastest balls, and these players are the best. They can hit any ball. They can make the runs. They will accumulate really big runs. They're usually your best players in the middle. And then you have the tail enders that just finish off the match, and they can't bat hardly at all. They're usually the bowlers that are still on the team. They're the worst batters. They can't stonewall. They can't consolidate. They have no strategy. They have no skill in hitting a fast ball. They're terrified of a fast ball because they know they cannot hit it for 6. Occasionally, if they're really lucky, they might just swing at it and the ball might just accidentally hit the bat and off it goes. But essentially, they are not expected to score any runs. In fact, they're only there because all the best has gone. This is how I feel in the matrix. I feel that I'm here, but I'm not meant to be here because I'm not the best of the best. And you would think that in a matrix, because it is a World War III, that you should have the best of the best to the last. save the best to the last, unlike the cricket where you've just got the tail enders that can only just barely hit a ball, just to finish off the game. But the game should already be decided after the last best batsman has batted. So maybe something has went wrong in the matrix. And that's why I think that it's strange, because I see it as that. This is just from my own perspective. So I've said that before. This is just, all these fantasies only come from my own fantasy human perspective, my way of looking at it. And it could well be that I'm in delusion because there could be so much more better there. And so maybe I might be lucky. Maybe I might just be a tail ender batsman and already the best batsmen are there as well. I don't actually see that. I don't feel it in my own reality. So naturally it is reasonable for me to say that I see now that in this World War III that for whatever reasons, for whatever has happened, instead of having the best at the last, saving the best to the last, I feel that if I am the best in any way, it's like being the best of the worst. But maybe that is meant to be too, I don't know. Because it is possible, I suppose, that the matrix going down, it's possible that in this fantasy scenario, in this kind of fantasy, and I say fantasy because this is the fantasy world. If you see it that way, and you see that you're dealing with strange characters like Alice in Wonderland, so you don't feel that you're dealing with normal human beings. You feel that you're dealing with the Mad Hatter and the Tea Party and all these different characters that are not like yourself, or even halfway what you would think yourself or a human is, right? Therefore, so there puts a different light on it too, because then maybe the best has already gone at a human level, and because the matrix is going down, the worst is left. And for whatever reason, the worst has to deal with, what's left of the matrix. I don't think that actually made sense, what I just said there. I try to make my fantasies at least a little bit logical, or at least, like I say, to have, but I can't quite put that quite right. But see, it does depend on what the situation really is. And that's what I say, if you're in a matrix, at least in my way of looking, I don't fully understand what the situation is. I see what I do of the matrix, but don't forget the matrix is going to show me a very negative view. So therefore I say, if the matrix is a very negative frequency and me as a human is meant to be and was intending to try to pull myself up to be a more positive frequency after a lifetime of negative frequency, and realising how important the vibration and the frequency is. Of course, I was going to do that before the matrix opened up, exposed itself, came down, as they say. Whichever way you want to look at it. That depends on how positive or negative you are too. If you're a positive person, you say the matrix opened itself up to me. It exposed its secrets to me. Aren't I lucky? If you're a negative person like me, you say the matrix came down on me because I did not want to play in the matrix. I did not want to see the matrix. I was happy with the old matrix or the old reality to where, but that's why I think that the matrix is a frequency negative thing, because I think that in the old reality, my old reality, because as you can see, I'm saying that my fantasy has changed. So therefore, in the old Earth reality, I was ready to start liking that matrix or that Earth reality. Accept it and make the best of it for the first time. But that reality then closed down and a more negative one opened up. So I was thinking that if that's the case, that was because the frequency was going to rise. Maybe only a little bit. That's why I say we're in diabolically desperate closing stages of things, because I'm doing more, I wasn't going to make a video even in the old reality. Wouldn't have been interested, would have had no reason to, would have thought it was ridiculous. So, so the matrix is like, you must play in our video game now. You must play in our negative video game, because it's a negative video game. It's not a positive video game. It's a negative frequency video game. And I say that because if I was trying to be a bit more positive frequency and then the matrix comes down, that means that the video game must be played at low frequency. And that's the only reason that I always ramble on about it being a frequency vibration video game. Of course, you would say, well, why does the human have to play in that? Why is the human so important? Well, obviously the human has the frequency and the vibration. You'd say, well, still, why are they in the game? What are they playing for? Why is the game played apparently against them? But of course all games are played against, because there's always two opponents. It's just that in the Matrix video game you don't see who your opponent is. But actually you can't see it because it is not one opponent. It is a matrix. You're playing against a whole matrix. You always have been. All my life I have been playing against a matrix. It's just that because of the times we're in now, it is played at full throttle. I think that's a movie too. And that means that, and that will probably depend on your position in the matrix, where you are. Because I don't fully understand, because I don't know why I'm in the game. Well, I'm in the game because I'm a human being, I suppose, and I'm still here. That's basically it at a bottom level. If you're in Earth and you're still alive and you're still a human being, you're not some other animal or some other species or some other, or a demigod or a god, I call them that because that is their position in the matrix. That is their position in the matrix. And that is how many people see them. And I have seen the demigods that way as demigods too, because anything that you worship or that you think is special or that you, you like I say, you give your energy to. You even give your frequency and your vibration to that which holds your interest in the matrix. If you're not living just as though you are the only being in the universe, then you are of the matrix has you. That's not meant to sound particularly fantastic, but it is just the reality, I would say now. Because anything that takes you away from yourself is of the matrix. And it also takes it does limit you too, because if you're not giving it to yourself, or at least if you're not living your own life to the full, then you are living it through the matrix gods, and you're living it, you're you're giving them more focus, and that may be fine even. I've done it all my life and I haven't been unhappy with it. Maybe the matrix doesn't like it even if I'm looking at the demigods and getting pleasure, because maybe the frequency rises. Maybe I've tricked myself in the matrix, I don't know, because it's certainly strange. All I'm saying is that there are a million ways to look at all these things. That's why it becomes a fantasy and a confusion matrix. It's not confusing for me at all. It's not. It just sounds that way because it's lost in translation, and because no one can stand in my shoes just as I can't stand in someone else's shoes. That's why we have a matrix, because each person is seeing the fantasy or the reality different. So everything I say is a fantasy to someone else, and everything someone else says to me is a fantasy to me, because you're not in that person's shoes. And their shoes are different too. Their reality is different. You could have two people standing looking at the same thing. And I see this every day. Two people looking at exactly the same thing, in exactly the same circumstances even. And I will be experiencing that circumstance as a very negative situation, whereas the person standing next to me would see it as mildly annoying at best, or at worst. You'd say, how is that possible? Well, that's the matrix, you see. That is hard to explain. And yet it's really easy. In my own mind, I know it's easy. It's simply that my fantasy or my reality is still different to theirs, because even though at that given moment we're both experiencing the same thing. But you see, human beings are a bit more complicated than that. And actually, I like to keep things simple, but the matrix doesn't like to keep things simple. This earth matrix, this earth that we live in, does not like to keep things simple. It likes to only keep things simple provided you are simple and in the dark matrix. By in the dark matrix, I mean in the dark, to where you're basically just doing things very predictably. If you do the same thing every day of your life, the matrix is quite happy, because then you see you're not changing the frequency one way or the other. And because we're in a very volatile matrix at the present time, because it's in closing stages, like I said before, the matrix does tend to hang by a thread, whereas it doesn't like to do that, and even I don't like that, because it is precarious. But maybe the matrix also likes the human to feel its own suffering too. Because another way of looking, I look at things from a lot of different viewpoints, as you can see. It's like some people, if they're hurting, they'll say, well, I'm hurting, and it doesn't benefit me to make you hurt. But it kind of does if you're a negative being, so therefore, I want the human to see my suffering. And so I will make the human suffer. My matrix is going down, and I want to take you down too. Because you're not really part of the matrix. So you shouldn't really go down. You shouldn't really be suffering or, behaving like the matrix entities. Because it's natural to be negative if your matrix is going down, but it's not natural to be negative if you are a human being and you're not really meant to be part of the matrix. I don't know if that made any sense. It's like Alice when she went into Wonderland, or Alice when she went through the looking glass. She didn't have to go through the looking glass or go into Wonderland. And it wasn't her natural realm. You know, so naturally she is surrounded by strange beings and strange circumstances, and she doesn't understand. And, you know, she's trying to make sense of it. And she's also frightened in a way, or at least she should have been, and she probably was. But at the same time, she's already stepped into that, or has that stepped into her? I don't know. Probably. Maybe she let her frequency go down, so therefore she had to go through the looking glass or into Wonderland. I don't know. Or she was already in Wonderland, but, you know, she tried to change the frequency, so therefore Wonderland became more powerful, had to become more powerful, had to show that it was the dominant force. That didn't actually make any sense. At least if I got a fantasy, I should try to make it to where it makes sense. If you're telling a fairy tale, it should at least have some relevance or some sense to it. But the matrix is full blast today. And when I say blast, I mean it is high frequency. High frequency of a negative nature. Human beings are meant to be high frequency of a positive nature. The matrix, when it is full blast, is high frequency of a negative nature. That doesn't make any sense, I know, but, you know. But, you know, they don't have any, the matrix doesn't have any power except at a negative frequency level. That is their game, that is their skill, that is their ability, that is all they know, that is what they expertise at, that is what they like. They don't want a matrix full of high frequency, limited human beings, as they said. But either way, I've gone off the track. Not made any sense in this video at all. I have to say that. Talk about lost in translation. It's completely lost in all aspects. But this is my only communication. This is my telephone. This is my communication to trying to be what I think we essentially are, in the sense that, like I say, we're spiritual beings, human beings, spiritual human beings. Okay, I'm going to emphasise that because I feel that I have to now. See, even what I was saying a few months ago, nothing has changed. But it's like you become more aware of other aspects of the matrix. So you say, hey, it may or may not matter, but perhaps I do need to emphasise that, you know, you can be, you know, different, you can, a lot of, as I said before, a lot of people might consider themselves to be so-called spiritual. It's just a word. You know, I've tried to define what I think it is. And that is strange for me to be sitting here trying to define what a human being is. To me, that sounds ridiculous. And it seems like I don't want to be in a world, in a matrix or in an earth or whatever you want to call this place where I am anyway, to where I have to sit here and explain to you, who might be listening, or to myself even, what a human being is. It's like seems strange to do that. It seems ridiculous to do that. And yet that's what it comes to in the matrix, because all is not as it seems. All is not human. You say, well, of course all is not human. We have lots of different other species, and yes, the world is a little bit different maybe to what it was 100, 200 years ago and this sort of thing. And maybe, yes, now we are more technological. Maybe now some human beings have changed their personalities, yes, and maybe now human beings are more connected to technology, etc., etc. And this is just putting it at the very basic fantasy level. It's up to each person how far into fiction or fantasy they want to go, or science fiction even, if you want to use that. I don't think it matters a great deal, but not unless you want to know what the whole reality really is. It may not be necessary to know the whole reality. On the other hand, it may be necessary. It would certainly give you more advantage in playing in a game if you are prodded and poked into playing in a game that you have no interest in playing in. And don't think that that is why you're meant to be in the earth. You know, I don't think that you're meant to be playing a game while you're here. I don't think that was meant to be my experience, and yet that is basically what has happened from the day you're born. Because you're not just making your own reality, are you? Even at a real level. You know, when I say a real level, even if you don't want to think that it's, like I say, a lot, if you don't think that it's staged, if you don't think that a lot of things are set up, if you don't think someone is pulling the strings, you know, how you could not think that, I don't know, because even at a very real level, from the day you're born, you know, you play by society, you're not, even what place you're born, you don't choose where you live, you know, you don't, you know, a lot of us, you know, most of us are directed by the matrix, because you can't just have everything as you want it. And you don't think you can anyway, because you don't think that your vibration or your thinking has any input into the reality. And of course, you know, living now in even a more matrix, you know, infiltrated world, an internet infiltrated world, a Wi-Fi infiltrated world, which is all technology at a very high level. And, you know, even low, I might only be using it at a low level right now by using a mobile. But I don't understand how a mobile works. I don't understand what other purposes a mobile could have. I don't understand where it comes from. I know it goes to some people when I make a video. But there could be other things that it could be doing. I wouldn't know, you know. So all I'm saying is that, you know, I've said this before, that even if, you know, I've lost my train of thought there, you know, even if, you know, you see technology as a thing that you like in your life, and you might, you know, like it. as I said before, you still don't fully understand it. Some people think they do, and I'm sure most people understand a lot more about it than me. But it's still something that is not as simple as what you think it would be. I lost my train of thought there. See, that is the matrix too, because I actually had a bit of an idea there that I thought made sense. Because things just will come to me, even when I'm making the video, and I'll say, hey, that's like a little light bulb moment, as they say, and then it's gone. Because I've got the frequency and the vibration around of the matrix, and this is why I don't adhere to it. Because although I might like to use some technology, I'm aware that even if I am using something I like, that what is around me is a negative technology. That whilst you can send out some good stuff with technology and receive some good stuff, you would not be aware that all that is around you could be still very negative, and that is still part of the technology, because the matrix is a complicated thing. At least I think it is anyway. And I don't think that it is good to have things complicated that you don't understand and that you can't control. That is not part of you, and that is used to confuse and complicate an already complicated earth, if you want to put it that way. It is getting beyond us. I know it's beyond me. See, the mobile, the matrix, the technology, that's a game a lot of people like to play. A lot of people like to play in the matrix. They like to play with the mobiles. They like to play with the humans. They like to play with other humans. But what about the human that doesn't want to play, like myself? You see, you can't not play. It's like, hey, come out and play. Hey, like my father said, you've got to get up and play the game. Get up and play a game when you don't even know what you're playing for. You don't even know what you're playing for. In fact, you only know what you should be playing against most of the time. And if you play against the matrix, you're playing against technology that is far superior to, your limited knowledge, your limited awareness of what you are, and also you're playing solo. Because human beings are separated. They're not a one collective. They're not coordinated and, and in sync with one another. They're not a collective mind machine that is single-minded and programmed to play to the best of its ability, even though it is limited technology. All technology is limited. All technology is finite. All technology, in my opinion, only in my opinion, this is only how I see things from my own human perspective. all technology must cease at some point. Technology must technology can rise to a very high level, I would think, and probably has in the Earth matrix. But at some point it just cannot keep going. That is because it's not natural. Nature can go on forever, even in the real old Earth, my old fantasy real old Earth. You know, it can regenerate itself. Things can die, but then something else will bloom. Technology isn't like that. Once a machine falls down and rusts, it cannot get up again and thrive. That's a kind of very simplistic, stupid, I know, really way of looking at comparing technology. And that's only in the long, long run too. It's not like, like in a short run, no. But you see, technology needs a human being. Like you could have a car and then it ceases to function. You can replace all the parts. You can keep replacing the parts. You can keep replacing the parts of a car with another part. But you need a human usually to do that, or human thought to get behind it. Okay, so I suppose you could then invent a machine that could build a car. I think they do that actually, which shows you how far we've gone, how far we've advanced, or how far backward we've gone, depending on how you want to look at it. Maybe that's why the quality isn't there anymore, you see, because machines can create, but you will lose quality. Whereas if something is made by a human hand, a lot of people agree with me on this, I think, anyway, you will get quality. But yeah, you can still do it the other way too, and many people are satisfied with that. They say, well, I'll just have more of the less quality, just replace the car more often, And that's what we do tend to do, which is why things, I think, break down so much sooner these days, because most of it is not built directly by human hand. Most of it is built by machines or technology. Technology creates technology. So technology can do that. Technology can stand on its own at some point, and has stood up, and is standing on its own at this point even at that level, much less at maybe other levels, But I don't know if I'm making any sense. I don't even know if I even believe what I'm saying myself. I actually don't think I do, because I actually don't know what I'm talking about most of the time. I kind of just get a little thing, I grab that ball and I run with it, and then I say, hey, I'm in a matrix, I'm playing a game. Here I am running with a ball. I don't know what the ball is. I don't know where I'm running to. I don't know where the goal line is. I just tripped over a minute ago. And hey, I didn't know there even was a ball game. And hey, I've never played a ball game in my life. I don't know how to play soccer. I don't know how to play football. I'm too old to play that sport anyway. If I wanted to play it, I should have trained when I was young. I can't run. I have trouble just getting down, walking to things. So you see, but then you have found that in a moment you can grab that ball and run. Maybe I've grabbed a time bomb. Or one of those, like in the old movies, a ball that's got a fuse on it. A hot firecracker, or even just a hot cake. It's burning my hand. I've got to get rid of it. That's how I feel. But, and that is the reality of the matrix too, and the reality of life, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. And I'm trying to be fancy here, and I have to combine psychology and stuff to some extent. Most of it's from my own experience, but obviously I've looked into it a bit because of my own experience. But it's still not like professional. But then again, I don't believe in professionals now anyway. So although I am the best of the worst at every level, I still think that in some ways, in some areas, even being the worst is still the best, only in the sense that if you even have a psychologist, like you could have a you could have a psychopathic psychologist, couldn't you? Because if most of the population are of a more personality type, then you can have those people in the very fields that they're supposed to be curing. They're supposed to be curing you from the same disease that they suffer from themselves, in other words. In other words, you're a psychopath or a narcissist and you go to a psychologist who is also a psychopath or a narcissist. How is that person going to cure you when they clearly have not only not cured themselves, but they think the condition is superior to the normal human condition? So it's kind of like that. That's, I'm laughing, but it's actually not really funny. And it is actually, I think, a reality now. It may not be a reality completely, but I would think that it would have to be. If you go along with that idea that, that we as, people have changed. And my own experience tells me that that is the case. But I might also add, if anyone has not fell asleep by now or went a long way away, which I wouldn't, what I say is only what I see myself, how I see myself and what is around me. And from a human perspective only, not from, and when I say human, I mean human as I see myself as human, because, like I say, I'm not an advanced human from my own way of looking at things now, a very limited human being, at what I would say is low frequency vibration, because circumstances are negative. And I'm not able to block out my surroundings, shall we say. That's what you're probably supposed to do. I don't think that's what you should have to do in a world. But of course, some people would say, well, that is how people better themselves, is to do that. Well, that's not really how I see things, but maybe I'm just not wanting to accept reality. Maybe I'm, saying, I don't want to play the game, so, it's too hard. I'm too lazy, maybe. I'm too worn out. And, maybe if I was younger, I might find it a bit fascinating. I doubt it. I think I would still find it, I would still, because I personally, like even, how even in some sports, like some people are team players. Well, I'm not a team player. If I was playing a sport, it would probably be a singular sport. So that's another point too. And so how do you play a team sport when you're supposed to be playing a team sport too? That's another thing too, because if you come to the way of looking at the reality now as I do, whether I'm right or wrong, whether I'm seeing it, whether I'm in total delusion land and fantasizing too much, or whether it is closer to the real reality, whatever that is, doesn't matter. But if what I even always say, like the basics of what I try to stick to, because I do see it as not only what the situation is now, but what essentially was originally meant to be, shall we say, or just really is, even though we've lost sight of it and we're not living that way, we're not participating in our life that way. And we don't want to either, because like I say, like if I say human beings are meant to be connected to other human beings, and maybe it is really necessary for that at this particular time too, that's another thing too, whereas maybe in the past it might not have been quite as necessary. It probably always was necessary if you were to benefit yourself and others, as opposed to benefiting the matrix. Or if you want the matrix to be more natural and more conducive to yourself, shall I say, perhaps putting it that way. Because if you're not aware that you're connected to other human beings, or you're like myself where you're antisocial, a loner, essentially by nature, and actually tend to prefer that, then, you're really half playing with the matrix too, because the matrix then is like, well, like we're a matrix and we're a collective of vast disciples, vast minions that want to play a game against a human collective, shall we say, or whatever humans are on Earth at a particular time, in Earth at a particular time, on Earth at a particular time. I suppose it's all the same. Because obviously, I got sidetracked there with the in, the on business, but, probably doesn't matter. If you're in it, you're still on it, aren't you? It's just that I say that you can't really get out. I don't think you can get out. You have to be let out. But, that's a perspective too, because some people might, I'm diverging here again because I'm trying to encompass a little bit, but I'm not making sense. But, like it occurred to me a while back when sometimes you hear what other people say. And there again, it's mainly through technology too, so who knows, whatever. But it's still something to consider. So I try to consider everything, even though I live in a fantasy world with certain views myself and a certain way of looking at things, obviously. Each person looks at things according to their own way of looking at things and what they think should be so, too. So, you can't help but do that. Doesn't mean that it's always correct, though. You can get things wrong that way too. Like I could get a lot of things wrong. And I have got a lot of things wrong. Because the matrix is a game, and you can at a superficial level in particular, it's very easy to get things wrong. And also, even if you get things right, because it is a matrix game, and it is aware that it's a game, just as you are, even if it's level that way, then they will have to play it that way. So that's when it'll be like, well, we can't play the psychological game here now. See, in my own case, it's a big psychological game. The matrix, even though it is technological and really does not like the human kind of psyche or the human emotion and feelings and all. It doesn't like that. But it needs to understand it in order to play the human, to get what it needs. That is what you call that is a genius level psychological technical game played by a genius level psychological technical God entity and its demigods, disciples, and minions. I think they use that word. That is just all those that are participating in that side of the playing field, if you want to look at it that way. You know, because it's a whole thing that operates, but it's something that's operated around me and a lot of other humans most of our life, and we're just not aware that it's operating around us. Because, as I've said before, the main problem that human beings have, or at least the problem I had even though I'm none the better for knowing what I know now, because knowing some truth sometimes, you know, or knowing some reality, you know, for whatever reasons, then that will make the reality more negative, and it will make the game harder, because the more you know, then the game will be played at a higher level. And it has to be, particularly if it's a final game, you know, I would imagine. So, yeah, knowing the game, knowing the, you know, knowing, you know, the even though, you know, I might say, like I said, I've said the human being is a higher level to any technology. But if the technology, you know, like if you give your knowledge to technology, if you give everything that you know as a human being to technology, as we do, you know, you are putting the technology on a level playing field with yourself, you know. And then if you are in a matrix, you may not even, you know, you don't have to even give it voluntarily, as I've said before. But it matters not, because, like I say, you're giving the technology that is genius level. You know, it's like giving all your secrets to your worst enemy, as I say, because it's going to play against you. It's like when you tell secrets to, I heard this and it has turned out to be true in my own life. If you tell all your secrets to a narcissist, you know, they will be your best friend, but those secrets will be used against you in time. They don't listen to you because they like the sound of your voice. They don't listen to you because they like your emotion. They don't listen to you because they, you know, they relate to you. They listen to you at a purely objective level, just like technology. And although they don't feel what you feel, although they have no vibration that way, they have no frequency that way, if you want to look at it that way, and I don't know what I'm talking about here, I openly say that, they will coldly calculate and try to understand what you're saying. They don't feel it. Another human being, you don't have to explain something, they'll get it straight away just like that, because they'll feel it, they'll understand it. But the narcissist won't, but they will use their intelligence and everything that's in them to focus, once again, to really concentrate and focus. They put all their focus onto that, to understand you in order to take you down. This is the matrix. You don't do that. Human beings don't know that they are in the game. They don't know that other human beings are, you know, only watch them and focus on them in order to bring them down and to bring their frequency down. Because it's in the interests of the matrix. A matrix is a low-frequency earth, a low-frequency world. It's not in their interest to have the frequency rise. Why is it not in the interest to have the frequency rise? That's what I had to ask myself. I'm like, why is it so important to keep human beings miserable, if you want to look at it that way? And particularly some human beings at different times, for different reasons, I would imagine. Why? I saw it. And that was the question I asked myself, because nothing made sense. And the Matrix just took my thought. See, I was sidetracked just temporarily. See, human beings are very alert and at their best are more aware of their surroundings. But really, we're only aware of a matrix. I'm not going outside and aware of just things that are beneficial to me. In fact, the matrix becomes overwhelming to where anything that is beneficial to me will be blocked out. Just as today is a cloudy day and the sun is blocked out. If you go outside and you feel good, it seems like a good, the weather, oh, it's a lovely day. Oh, what a beautiful morning, that sort of thing, That's not going to happen in the matrix if it's closing stages, because, so I have to say, why is it important for the matrix to keep human beings at a miserable level, shall we say? Always feeling not really on top of the world. What does it benefit? Obviously, you could say that about a psychopath. Why does it benefit this or that, or a narcissist? And, they have they're a reflection of the matrix God, as I've said, so it is kind of like that. And they also are, to me, to put it once again, because you see it from both sides, to me, a narcissist and a psychopath is both a product of the matrix, as we all are, and also a victim of the matrix, as we all are, except that they play even more for the matrix, unconsciously maybe, subconsciously, depending on who they are, what their position is, how aware they are of, like I say, the actual earth, the actual, whether you're aware that you are, surrounded by demigods, whether you're aware how powerful they are or not, and whether you're aware that they serve another god, who or what that is, another story or another question, maybe for some people. I've lost my track here again. But so that's why I say that, to me, it just seemed logical, if there is anything logical in the earth, that, because it's easy to think that nothing's logical. In fact, I think some of my old videos where we do not live in a logical world. Well, no, we don't live in a logical world, because everything is reversed. Everything is, not as perhaps I would expect it to be. It's reversed. It's wobbled about. It's pulled back and forwards. It's like everything to confuse, everything to create, even just to create, calamity in the mind, or even in the physical reality, to where if you can't win the game, particularly with some people, or even just in general, then just make a big mess of things, so that way none of us can make out head or tail of anything. And that's essentially what I think most of the time. Like, most of the time you're just like, I really can't make out the full sense of it. It doesn't seem to make sense. And just when you think you've worked out something, then something else will turn around to put a spanner in the works, as they say, So it's kind of like that. And I've rambled on too much, and perhaps this video is what I thought might be a good one. I had a good idea to talk about a movie today. Where's the movie? Nowhere. I was going to talk about a song. Where's the song? No. Because it's much easier for me to get a point across if I use something else rather than me expressing it in my mixed up, haphazard way, which certainly is also of the Matrix, because that is just how the Matrix likes you to think, likes you to be, likes you to present. Because like I say, if you become aware and you sort of say, hey, well, look, I'm just meant to ignore all this. I know I can't win. I don't want to play. If I do play, I'll just make a fool of myself at best. So I'll just try to sit on the sidelines and not play. Or I'll sit on the fence. I won't go on one side or the other. That's what a lot of people do. They just want to sit on the fence. That's the saying. You sit on the fence. But the Matrix is like, you've sat on the fence too long. We've run out of players now. So we're just going to poke and prod you and stick pins in you until you at least fall off the fence one way or the other. But you will play. You will play, or if you don't play, it'll be game over for you anyway, in a way, because you are in the earth. It's a bit like in this real world, even in the real world, like just at a very practical, simple level. If you don't play by the rules of the society you're in, if you don't go along sometimes with those around you, you will be taken out of the game, or you'll be taken out of society, or, it's like everything else. If you say, oh, well, look, I want a drink, but I haven't got any money, so I can't pay for it. I think I'll just walk into the store and take it. Then you're out of the game. They'll take you and put you somewhere else. So, it's the same thing. You might say, well, that's reasonable. That's society. Yes, but it's still the game too. Am I allowed a drink and someone else not allowed a drink just because they haven't got any money? That person might be a more spiritual human being than me or you. They just haven't got the money for the drink. And if they're going to die of thirst, they've got nothing to lose by walking in and trying to take it, have they? If you want to look at it that way. That's putting it at a dramatic level. And that's probably not a good thing. All I'm saying is that, I know I'm not making any sense here in what I just said, but like maybe in my fairyland way of looking at it, we had an earth, and the earth was for everyone, and so therefore basic things should be for everyone. Like if the earth was created, was it just created for the demigods? Well, it would appear so. It would appear that the earth was only created for some beings to be more special or more important than others. But then again, we live in a reverse world. So, I personally, from my own personal way of looking at it, say, well, yes, that is the reality, and that is also what some people would agree with, and therefore that is how it is. It doesn't matter whether I say it shouldn't be like that. If it is, it is. And if all agree, then that is what will be. And, so all I do is talk about fantasies and alternate things, an alternative way of looking at something, an alternate situation, because like I say, I've always been someone that sees all sides of things, or at least will see two sides to an argument or two sides to two people. I might favour one more than the other, but that doesn't mean I don't see the other side. But either way, I've rambled on far too much and made no sense. And I should have talked about the movie. Have I got any time left to go on to the song when I don't even have all the lyrics of the song? And have I got the energy to? See, all I'm trying to explain is the position of a player in a matrix. Everyone is a player in the earth, whether you think it's a matrix, a natural earth or whatever. That really probably doesn't matter. You're still a player. And the only difference between me and maybe some other people, and there again I could even have this wrong, because for all I know the players could be, all the players could be very aware of their position. For all I know, all the players could know more about the game than me. They might even have the full game board. They might know the full thing for all I know. It would probably vary, and I may not know the full thing. But, my only perspective on that is that, the human being is a central character, I would say, just out of necessity because of the frequency and vibration. That was a conclusion that I come to just in thinking in general. But, you don't look around, and even at personal level, you don't, like I say, if you don't understand that frequency and vibration is a necessary thing for the matrix. But you see, it's complicated in a way, and yet once you understand the kind of basics and then they all fit together, it forms the pieces fit the puzzle more than, shall we say. And I've been fancy here, but see, even when we're talking about the frequency and stuff, and other beings manipulating that, and taking control of human beings for that purpose, then you have to say, whatever like for instance in myself, like why am I not just taken out of the game? Because I don't want to play. I don't want to play. And they also don't particularly want me to play, because no one wants, if you're playing a game, no one wants a dud player in the team or in the opposing team even, probably. No one wants a dud player. And if your heart's not in something, But you see, even that, like I say, from my own way of looking at it, that's why I always come back to that frequency and vibration thing, because it's like, I don't think I was meant to be a player. I'm not a champion player. I'm a passive force. If you're playing in a matrix video game or even in a sport, you don't want passive players. You want active players. You want aggressive players. You want champion players. You want, like my father used to say, you want players that are playing up and playing the game. You don't want to have someone on your team that's just filling in the 13th spot because they can't find another decent player. What are you going to do? We want to play the game, so we can't find anyone else who knows how to play the game. We can't find anyone else that knows how to play football. But we desperately need to finish this game and we want to play this game. So what do? We just pull the person off the street and say, come in, could you fill in the 13th spot? And if you don't, no, you've got to come and fill the 13th spot. We won't let you go unless you do, It's kind of like that, I think. And so they're like, well, but you see, that's how I feel that's personally what I feel my position in the Matrix game was meant to be. I don't think I was meant to be an active player. I think I was meant to be a passive player, only because that's how I feel. But maybe I've been taken over by the Matrix for a lifetime, so I probably have not learnt any active skills anyway. And whatever personality I probably could have had has probably been moulded by the Matrix, just as the narcissist and the psychopath is largely created. Our very personalities and what we think is our identity is created by the Matrix. And the Matrix is really in very full swing today. I'm not sure if it's coming across on the video. It probably isn't. But it's certainly coming across in my ears. Yeah, because they got the whole street up outside here. And I wouldn't mind that, but they've had it up for ages and ages, making unbearable din every day, from sun up till sundown. But the thing is that they basically finished it and cleared out, and 2 days later they're back and say we've got to do the whole thing all over again. We made a little boo-boo. Well, I wonder what that boo-boo was that they have now got to do. This is the world we live in, whichever way you look at it. Technology or not, me or not, I hope that some of you are getting my fantasy here. But either way, they've got the vastest, best equipment, because this is a huge project. This is like putting tunnels all under Sydney, where I live. Roadway tunnels all underneath, and this is the final leg. Yeah, as usual, I'm in the final leg, of course, naturally. And I did not even know there was a leg or that there was a tunnel or any of this stuff going on until it's under my nose and outside. And of course, me not liking technology, yes, I'm like, what are they doing? Why are they putting all these pipes everywhere? Like it's a tunnel. I don't particularly want a tunnel underneath me. Like I like to know what I'm seeing. But either way, this is, I should have known about this for years ago, but that's what I'm saying. So in the dark, even about basic things that are around you. And maybe there's a reason for that but like I say, I think that I was basically I'm a passive participant in this earth as a human being, as a person, and I was fine with that. But that's what I'm just trying to say is that, for some people, their part in the Matrix or in this earth, or just as a person, even if you don't take it as anything like I say, just if you're a human being, not everyone is meant to be a demigod. People will tell you this. Not everyone is meant to be a world beater. Not everyone is meant to be seen on the world stage. But maybe we would like to. When I was younger, yes, not now. See, this is why I became aware of things even just a couple of years ago, because I had got to that point where I'm like, well, look, I would have liked to have done this or that, but I'm a little bit past it now. And I have now been shown not by the matrix, just by personal interaction, that, if you can just enjoy your little reality and, be a passive person, passive player, or a passive human being, just in whatever area you are, and you can find acceptance of that and say, well, look, I would have liked to have played on the matrix playing field, but I now accept that's not possible. I no longer crave it. I accept my position of being a fallible little human being, but I appreciate and can live, provided I have a little bit of freedom. And I can try to enjoy the simple things of life, perhaps, that even other people take for granted, but I can perhaps get more out of. Because if you haven't experienced some things that even some normal people experience, that can be, just there again, I'm rambling too much personally, but that can be then special. It's like if you've never been let outside and never seen a sunrise or a sunset. The first time you see it, it will be spectacular and you will appreciate it. Whereas to everyone that sees it every day and has spent a lot of time on the beach, or they have not been kept inside, it's not a big deal. It becomes commonplace. They're bored stiff with themselves, so they want to play in the matrix game. See, the more you have in life, I would think, and there again I'm being profound here, I suppose, even though it's not really that, but I'm sounding like some sort of guru or philosopher. And I have no time for all that, really, to be honest. Life is simple. It should be simple, and there's no reason for any human being to compare with another or to need a philosophy or any of this stuff. It's not necessary. You don't have to answer to anyone. All human beings should just be what they are, accept what they are, be happy in that, not compare or compete with the silly matrix. And once you do adopt that attitude, then the matrix no longer has you. Then you have conquered the matrix. But unfortunately, there is no conquering a matrix because, if you are not of the matrix and you decide to separate from the matrix will, yes, then do everything it can to keep you playing in the matrix game. It doesn't want you to leave. It doesn't want you to cease playing. And it doesn't want you to be too much of a passive player either, because if you're a passive player but you are not at any frequency level, then yes, you can be allowed. You'll be just like a non-one of the matrix. And then you'll only be required to play, yes, if the times become desperate, if there is an end situation to the game, shall we say, then the situation will change. Then all might be required to play. Maybe that's why, I'm prodded to play now. But, you definitely can't be a passive player provided you are a content passive player. I was prepared to be a content, low-level matrix player, a non-entity in this world, a non-participant, but a content one. That's why I came to that realisation, that it was all about the human frequency and vibration. I couldn't do anything else after I had exhausted all avenues, just at my own personal level, because I'm like, hey, there's just nothing there. I've got nothing to offer, like I say. But maybe it's got to such a situation where so many people have gone to such a low frequency, including myself, but maybe some people are right at rock bottom. Maybe I'm just like a little bit above rock bottom, or was. Maybe that's how close the game was. Maybe that's how diabolically negative this earth now really is. That's how I see it. I see it as a terribly, diabolically dark, negative earth in almost every way. Now, whether that's my own negativity in seeing the world that way, because certainly not everyone does. So you project it onto the world and then it becomes negative, because if you focus on what you see as negative, some people see the same things as me, as I say, and they say, well, look, that's not a big deal. And I say, yes, it is a big deal. I get upset by it. I see it as diabolically evil, anti-life. Evil is anti-life to me. It doesn't have to be particularly... I suppose most people would agree with that. But that depends on what you value as life too, doesn't it? So that's another thing too. Everyone has a hierarchy of what they think is valuable. And people now, of course, some of them come along on the thing of all life is valuable. But that's easy to say, But they will be played by the matrix then too, because it is a game. It's a negative game. Every human emotion will be used by the matrix. The matrix is technology versus a natural human. That's how I see it. And that's certainly how I feel about it right now when they're digging up all the street and making all that din with their technology. I wouldn't advocate technology even if I thought it was a positive thing. Because, even if I thought there was no matrix, even if I thought we had a wonderful natural world and I was at a reasonable frequency, I still wouldn't advocate, that loud technology. I do not go along with technology at any level. I do not think a house should be built by a human operating a machine. If they can't do it with their hands or their thinking or their mind power, that house should not be built. See, so I'm going into the real, strong, opposing fantasy way of looking at it, because I'm seeing it now as extreme. I don't like to be extreme because I don't think that anyone should ever be extreme, and I never have been extreme most of my life. But because I now think that it is a game, and because I do see the world as heading into closing stages of things, you have to look at things differently. And also you have to look at things clearly and keep it simple. So in order to keep it simple and clear, you have to be more extreme in your viewpoint, But actually it's a reality, because like the noise they're making with all that stuff, if we're living in the year we're living with high technology and all the computers and stuff we have, but we still have to make a huge racket to dig a little ditch, and to create negative vibration on a human being. But of course human beings don't believe in frequency and vibration, but surely they believe in if they get a headache from the noise, they might say, well, it's worth it. Why should we care about one stupid old lady in Leichhardt in Sydney on Henry Street? Why should we care, if there's a lot of noise being created for her when they're building all these wonderful tunnels under this city, and putting all these pipes everywhere to, to facilitate all this underground world. Well, hey, I wouldn't want an underground world even if it was all natural. Even if someone said to me, oh, they're going to build a beautiful natural parkland on top. Well, no, that is not the reality. I don't care if it is. Let's keep our dirty little smoke up the top, where we can see it, But either way, that's just my opinion. But also, it is a reality that they're pulling down the oldest, biggest, best trees in order to create this underground motorway. But then they say they're going to build trees and parklands on top. They're the ones that are in fantasy world, not me. It's not going to happen. No. And I should add, this video that I was going to make yesterday, but I'm making today, and has now probably gone on for 10 years I'm surprised it hasn't run out, even though I had more space. This video, which maybe I'll have to make it the next one, even though it was supposed to be about the 2 movies and the song and whatever. See, the Matrix does get to you. But it's mainly the noise that's getting to me, actually. It's hyping me up, as you can see, because, if you've got, like, vibration going and this jerky noise going through, it does not... I shouldn't be making a video under these circumstances, but the way I figure it is, I like to do that because I'm like, the Matrix wants you to not do it because it's making all the noise, And it's a force of its own. It's a mind. It's controlled by a mind that is negative, essentially very negative, very anti-life, anti-human life, anti-life. All real life is a human type of life. Organic, if you want to use that word, because I don't know the correct words to use. That's my view anyway. I could be wrong. I do not think that I'm living in an organic, natural life world anymore. No, it is an Alice in Wonderland fantasy, artificial, unnatural, completely anti-life world. Anything that is not human is anti-life. But that's another thing too, because humans even have got the mind game played against them. I think that this world game, if you want to look at it this way, this earth game, even if it's only small earth, in other words, even if it's smaller, even if it was just being played where I am and there was nothing else, because who knows what this world really is now? I would not know. Each person's little area could be just the playing fields, revolving around humans. That's how I see it. So I place the humans as the sole importance. But, the mind that operates the game is not human, is a technological force. And it is a negative to natural life force. And humans will be played in this game against technology, but also against one another. And that is the real game, I think. This is my own conclusion. The real game is that the game has to be played out against humans, but humans must defeat themselves and one another, because human beings are human beings, they're spiritual beings. They must be given priority. This is my conclusion. Otherwise, why, if you have more power, more technology, and you know more, and you have every advantage, and you could take that life force away from the Earth matrix at any given moment. And you don't want that life force. You want it to go, but you can't physically, despite the power of incredible technology and a joint collective effort, cannot actually take humans from the matrix. at some level, the main purposes of the game is for humans to make that choice themselves. I'm not sure if this is the full thing, but I do see this a bit. But anything that is allowed by a human, or anything that a human can't stop, because it's like this. I want to stop the technology. I oppose it. I don't want it in my earth. But I'm just one human being. So if the collective of humans do, or allow, or want the big highway under me and everyone else, tunnels, big roadways, big, underground freeways, shall we call them? I'm trying to think of what you call these roads. If the majority of humans accept this or want this, then I'm defeated by my own kind, you see. And that is okay with the rules of the matrix and with the rules of whatever there is, because then it is acceptable and it is no one is breaking the rules, even though the matrix God entity would probably desire to break the rules and wishes for many humans to exit the matrix. They are no longer welcome, they are no longer valuable, they are no longer a benefit. They're a negative frequency to the matrix, because if they want to be a higher frequency, that is not the frequency of this earth. You see, if you want to put it that way at a simplistic kind of level, even though, of course, I don't know how it works, but that just me over the period of time wondering why. Because it's like, it's like saying, hey, I can, look at my power, look at my technology. You are no